Johnny Talk Sports in with the Week 3 college football predictions. And what a Week 2 we had last week. We had Oregon go into the horseshoe and upset Ohio State. We had Iowa go on the road and upset Iowa State. We had Arkansas just absolutely beat up on Texas. We had Notre Dame almost lose to Toledo. We had Texas A&M having to grind out a 10-7 win over Colorado with backup quarterback Zach Calzada. We had BYU upset Utah for the first time in over a decade. So that just adds to a lot of the surprises that we saw in Week 2. What is in store for Week 3? But before I get into the predictions, I do want to quickly go over my top 10. And if you want an explanation in the comment section, let me know and I will. I just don't want to ramble about this for 10 minutes. So I'm just going to list off my ranking here. At 1, I have Alabama. At 2, I have Georgia. 3, I have Oregon. 4, I have Iowa. 5, I have Penn State. 6, I have Oklahoma. 7, I have Texas A&M. 8, I have Clemson. 10, I have Cincinnati. And 10, rounding out my top 10, I have Ohio State. So that was just my top 10. Again, if you'd like an explanation, let me know in the comment section. I will explain it. So on to the Week 3 college football predictions. Now, I made a mistake last week. I thought that this game was going to be played last week, but it is being played this week. And I am going to stick with my pick here of UCLA over Fresno State. UCLA, they're coming off of a bye week. They had an extra week to prepare. Although Fresno State, they essentially had a scrimmage game against Cal Poly last week. Fresno State quarterback Jake Haener leading college football in passing yards with 1,009 passing yards. Although he has played 3 games this season, and there's a good chance that you will lead the FBS in passing yards when you've played one more game than almost all the other quarterbacks. So how much does that really have meaning? I'd say that if Fresno State, if they can make this a shootout, they've got a chance to win this game. Although, I also thought Hawaii and UCLA had the potential of being a shootout. And UCLA won in dominant fashion, and they dominated from start to finish. Michigan transferred Zach Charbonnet, second in the Pac-12 in rushing yards, with 223. And with Oregon beating Ohio State last week, I think it does show that Fresno State isn't a team to underestimate. In fact, Fresno State, they contained the run really well, despite them losing off of the running game. They only allowed 3.8 yards per carry against Oregon. And they also turned the ball over 3 times. So if Fresno State can play clean football, they've got a chance to pull off this upset. But I am going to pick the Bruins to pick up a 30-17 victory. However, if Fresno State plays clean football, I think that it'd be much closer, if not pull off the upset. Next, we have Nebraska and Oklahoma. This is the 50th anniversary of the game. Now, the real question for Nebraska is, can you find an identity on offense? Now, since the loss to Illinois, which at this point, considering Illinois has lost their last 2 games, it's not looking like a good loss. It's looking worse by the week. Because this game was slated for the Huskers as a game to really find out where this team was as a program. And this was also a game that Scott Frost really wanted to cancel out of in the offseason. So where will Nebraska be offensively? Now, there was talks last week that Nebraska could have scored 50 points against Buffalo. They also scored 52 against Fordham. Again, how much meaning is there to Nebraska's last 2 games against Fordham and Buffalo? is there really anything meaningful to discuss about that? If you look at Nebraska against Ohio State last year, in those first couple of drives, especially the opening drive, Nebraska's offensive line, they were really bullying Ohio State's defensive front. So if they can find that identity on offense, because Oklahoma, they have that tendency to give up a lot of points. Lincoln Riley doesn't make halftime adjustments that much. Well, he doesn't do well with it. He just doesn't put his foot on the accelerator. And that's how Oklahoma's lost quite a few of their games recently. That's how they almost lost to Tulane a few weeks ago. Is Oklahoma's defense better? Is it more of the same? I mean, almost losing to Tulane when you had a big lead going into it in that second half, it's kind of hard to say. But I think it's really going to matter if Spencer Rattler can perform for the Sooners. Because there are moments where Spencer Rattler, he looks a bit inconsistent, and then there's other moments where he looks like one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in college football. And can Adrian Martinez play a clean game for the Huskers? I honestly think that Oklahoma blows out Nebraska in this game 55-17. But it's going to be interesting to see how Nebraska performs offensively, because this is a game I think can be slated for moving forward for Nebraska for the rest of the season. Because if they can at least find some sort of an offense, then the sky can be the limit for the rest of the season for the Huskers. But if not, then could Scott Frost perhaps be on the hot seat? But I have the Sooners winning 55-17. I think Spencer Rattler has a big-time performance. I think he throws about 4 or 5 touchdown passes. Oklahoma wins. Next, we have Michigan State and Miami. Michigan State, led by Kenneth Walker at running back, 321 yards rushing so far this season, leading the Big Ten and 4th in the FBS. While Miami, they did get a win against Appalachian State last week. Not the prettiest of wins, but a win is a win at this point for the Hurricanes, as it is for any team. But that was a must-win for Miami. I felt like if Appalachian State would have lost that game, Manny Diaz would have been on the hot seat. And it's just tough playing Alabama opening weekend. It's tough playing Alabama, period, because a lot of the times that could be a season breaker for you. But at least Miami, they held it together. They picked up a win, so they bounced back. But we'll see if they can win again this week and go back-to-back. But I think this game does go either way. There were a lot of high hopes for Miami going into the season. Derek King coming back for one more season. And there was high hopes for the Hurricanes that the U can be back. But Michigan State, though, I think is underrated. I think they have one of the most underrated wide receiving cores in college football. And I think that could be the difference in this matchup. I do anticipate they are going to use Kenneth Walker so Michigan State can play their Big Ten philosophy type of football, and that is to pound the rock. And I think Michigan State, they pick up a 24-23 win. I think that it's going to be a game that might get decided by defense. Because both these teams, they still have talented defenses. Despite Miami's defense not looking good against Alabama, but that's going to happen. I think Michigan State picks up the narrow 1-point victory, 24-23. Next, we have Arizona State and BYU, a top 25 matchup. Not a top 25 matchup I was expecting coming into the season, but this is a top 25 matchup, and really all top 25 matchups, they are worth the hype, and I think this one is no exception. You have Jaden Daniels for Arizona State, who I think is another one of those quarterbacks that's very underrated, underappreciated, which I think applies to a lot of Pac-12 quarterbacks. And BYU, Jaron Hall, 5 touchdown passes this season, no interceptions. He's played pretty clean football this season so far. And BYU, they also beat Utah for the first time in over a decade. So I think BYU, it's either going to do one of two things, and it could be some of both. It's either going to be an emotional win, and they're going to kind of come in a little too overconfident going to this next game against Arizona State, or it's going to be used as a confidence booster, as momentum, which I think it could be some of both. But I just think at the end of the day, I just think Arizona State, I think that they're a team, that Pac-12, that's really being underestimated. Although the Pac-12, they've come to play this season so far. And it wouldn't surprise me if we did indeed see a Pac-12 team in this college football playoff this season. So I think the Sun Devils, I think they pick up a 27-20 win over BYU. Next, we have Cincinnati and Indiana, and this was a matchup that had a lot of hype to it coming into the season, but now does it really seem like it's worth the hype? Because Indiana, they completely looked terrible against Iowa, although maybe now that loss against Iowa doesn't look too bad now, considering they beat Iowa State really convincingly last week. And Cincinnati last week, it took them a while to get going, but they did get going in that second half. And is it possible that Desmond Ridder is a Heisman contender? And I'd say that he is at this point. If he have a good performance this week against a Big Ten defense, then I'd say put him in the race. Is Indiana a one-season wonder, however? Because they had a good season last year. And if one or two things went differently in the Ohio State game last year, maybe they steal that win from the Buckeyes. So it's just hard to say. However, Luke Fickell, recently he has had his defense at another level. Very disciplined coach, got a really good defense. And I think that if the defense performs really well, I think Cincinnati wins this game easily. In fact, I'm going to have the Bearcats winning this game 27-14. I'm just not sold on Indiana after the Iowa game. I don't want to pick Indiana here because they let me down in week 1. So I'm picking Cincinnati in this one. Could we see Cincinnati in the college football playoff this season if they do go undefeated? Because Cincinnati, they also play Notre Dame later on in the season. So we'll see. But they win this game against Indiana. Next, we have Alabama and Florida. Are we seeing a quarterback conversation in Gainesville between Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson? And Emory Jones has thrown 4 interceptions so far this season, while Anthony Richardson, he's a top 10 rusher in college football. And the Gators, they find themselves second in college football in rush offense. And I think that could be the key in this game for the Gators if they're going to win this game. If they can get the running game going on this Alabama defense, and if they can control the game, dictate the pace they want in this game, if they can just slow the game down, keep Bryce Young and the Alabama offense on the sidelines, I think that could be a difference. That could be a huge X factor in this matchup. Because Bryce Young, he has played near perfect this season so far. 571 passing yards and 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But I just think that with Alabama being on their title defense, I mean, this could be a trap game, although I don't know if trap games really apply to Alabama necessarily. I mean, sure, there always is that one game a year that Alabama has to grind out at the end, whether it's in the playoff or the championship game or at some point in the regular season. I really don't think this is it. I just think if Alabama forces Florida to have to throw the football, I just like Alabama's chances to win big. And I essentially think that's what's going to happen here. Because if Florida can't get that running game going, I just don't like their chances. Because then they have to throw the football, and Emory Jones already thrown 4 interceptions so far this season. Plus, Anthony Richardson has a hamstring injury, but they do expect Anthony Richardson to practice this week, so I would essentially assume that he will be playing in the game. However, I think the Tide roll in this one 38-10. And finally, we have our game of the week, Auburn and Penn State. And what immediately sticks out to me in this game is Auburn being third in rushing offense and first in rushing defense. Now, I know Auburn hasn't had the toughest opponents to begin the season, but I think it's perfect scrimmage for them, especially when you have a new head coach. I think those 2 cupcake games, I think it's beneficial for Auburn. And the reason why the running game for Auburn sticks out to me is because Penn State is 57th in rushing defense. They had a difficult time stopping the run against Wisconsin. And you could argue that maybe Penn State ultimately won the game with defense. They took advantage of some Wisconsin crucial mistakes, not only at crucial points in the game, but at crucial points on the field. Because there was one where Wisconsin had a couple bad exchanges, and one of them was, I believe, was inside the 10-yard line. And Penn State recovered that, and it was heading towards a touchdown drive. And then another bad snap, bad exchange. Wisconsin was at the 1-yard line. It went back to, I believe, it was about the 6 or 7. And then Mertz threw an interception on 4th and goal. So Penn State, you can say they won that game with defense, but also Wisconsin made several crucial mistakes in that matchup. For Auburn, if you can get Jarquez Hunter and Tank Bigsby going for the Tigers in this game, I think you can win this one. Also, can Bo Nix rise to the occasion? Because Bo Nix, he has had his moments, positive and negative. But with this being a night game for Penn State, it's one of their whiteout games. This is going to be a tough one, and Penn State, when it's a whiteout game, it's one of the toughest places to play in college football. But if Auburn can score early in this game and take the Penn State crowd out of it, kind of try to silence them a bit, that's early momentum on your side. I do think this game is going to be close, but I think Auburn pulls off the upset on the road and wins 24-20. So those are my Week 3 college football predictions. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, if there is another game that I didn't predict here that you want me to predict, leave it in the comment section down below, and I will respond to it. I'm going to try to respond to everybody's comments this week. So, until next time, have a good day, and enjoy Week 3 of the college football season if you aren't back for the Week 2 NFL predictions.